what is this set of assumptions in more detail that perturb you, and why do you, let's start with that. What is this set of assumptions about about race relations in the U.S. that perturb you?
Well, there's one main assumption, which is that it's the job of the, shall we say, woke Black person to focus on racist obstacles to Black success and to purport that racism, be it social or systemic, is a conclusive obstacle to general Black success rather than an impediment that you can get around. And then there's an extension from that racism of both of those kinds is so oppressive that it's the defining experience of being a Black person. And so it means that if you are a Black person and you're writing, be it fiction or nonfiction or opinion, your focus is supposed to be always and forever racist oppression. Because if you're not doing that, you're not authentic and you're dissociating yourself from Blackness in some way. And I find that as a Montessori kid who has a lot of interests, I've always found that extremely confining. As soon as I hit adolescence, I realized, wow, I'm expected to be this racism-focused person maintaining a wariness of white socially that has not been necessary since about 5 years before I was born. And I think that it is a cloak that people put on because human beings seek comfortable cloaks to put on. It becomes a sense of being part of a tribe, but it has a way of departing from what reality actually necessitates. And I have just not been able to gracefully allow that sort of thing to define my life or to pretend to believe in those things. And so when I was around, how old am I when I started to pop? In my early 30s, I was at Berkeley. First was Cornell, then was Berkeley, then was the Manhattan Institute. And at UC Berkeley, there was the racial preferences were discontinued. The idea was that there were no longer going to be different standards for allowing Black and Latino students to be admitted than white and Asian students. And the way this was talked about was as if all Black people are poor, as if the idea was that you don't change standards even for people who've grown up hard, when actually most Black students at Berkeley by then were very middle class and the problems were different. And I just couldn't remain silent. I remember the hardest thing for me was that there would be a white professor who would come and lean in my doorway and start, saying all of the usual pious sorts of things about race that I don't think truly cohere, such as implying that racism defines my entire existence. And I was expected to just sit there and nod. They really thought that any Black person thought that way. And I thought, no, you're missing me completely. Many Black people feel misread by whites. Well, I was having a different version of it.
And oh my God, yes. The idea that racism is supposed to be defining me, defining my personhood, defining my Blackness in order to hold on to some sort of Black respect or the Black card. Yep, 100%. That is a lived experience that I can completely and 100% agree with. Amongst the Black community, it's like, that's why you see a lot of Black people who denounce this, they are discredited by the Black community by being called coon, Uncle Tom, bed wench. You hate yourself, you have internalized self-hate or whatever, right? It's almost like if you don't say, yes, racism is such a heavy part of my life that I experience it all the time, that I'm so oppressed, that cops are hunting me down. Like, if I don't go along with that somehow I'm trying to be a better Black person, or I'm trying to separate myself from the other Black people and say I'm different, I'm better, or something like that. That's how a lot of woke Black people see it. It's like, well, you think you're different than us, you think you're better than us, so we're gonna disown you for not caping for this narrative, right? When most of them haven't experienced it themselves. Especially if you are literally on the grounds of a university, especially a prestigious university, and you're still trying to have this oppressive narrative is beyond me. The white liberal professor sticking his head in to be like, oh, poor you, poor Black man, you're so oppressed. Definitely. I've talked about this multiple times. The amount of time that some white progressive, usually a woman, just openly talks to me of like, so how is it for you as a black person in America? Is it hard? Is it hard for you, Blackie? You know what I mean? It's like, and you're like, are you actually serious right now? Or when Obama was running for presidency, and I could just be in the line at fucking Savon or whatever, it's whatever grocery store shop, and some fucking white person turns around and like, so Obama, black man. He just like, why are you just assuming I'm voting for him? Like, it's just insane. And it's like, it's woke racism. This guy, I believe, coined the term woke racism. And you're just like, I can't believe you don't hear yourself right now. Life can be tragic, right? Life can be horrible, tragic, unfair, full of trauma and all that stuff. We got that, right? But life can also be beautiful, and life can also be amazing. And you have a finite time on this planet, but you want me to fill up that time being mad at something that's not really affecting my life. Like, have I experienced racism? Yes, I've experienced racism, but to such a minute percent of my life, like it doesn't affect it. And when it does happen, it's usually some dickhead asshole with a low IQ calling me the N-word, and you want me to allow that person to live rent-free in my head? People have self-induced misery. They go seek it out so they can be mad about something, so they don't have to work on their own shit, the real shit they're actually struggling with. They can put all their crap on something else and project it on something else. Or they can virtual signal and pretend like they're this amazing fucking white savior or really pro-black person or whatever. Anyway, let's continue.
Having a different version of it.
And I was curious about you because you said at the beginning that even though your mother had taught you, in some sense, these woke precepts, there was something in you that rebelled against it.
Yeah,
what was that?
Yeah, it's not. I don't rebel against the idea that, for example, there is institutional racism. I don't think it should be called that, but there are inequities in society between, say, black and white that are due to racist attitudes, usually in the past, and racist biases and racist lookings past. All of those things are definitely true. There are all sorts of things in Black history that have helped to set us should certainly know about. One should know about the redlining of neighborhoods, where in many cities, most Black people lived in neighborhoods where banks would not give you a loan. All of these things are very real. I never felt like I rebelled against that. What I rebelled against was the idea that you base your whole sense upon those things, such that you live a life that's abbreviated because you're exaggerating how bad it still is, and you're distorting what's necessary to create dignified lives for Black people. And my feeling has always been, you probably have about 80 years. You know, you're lucky if you've got 80 years. And if you spend your whole life maintaining, in my time period, the same battle poses in the 80s and 90s that people needed in the 50s and 60s, after a while, you've spent your life play acting, and then you die and the world goes on. What I rejected was the exaggeration.
Again, very, very, very true. The fact that I need to pretend that I'm still living in the 1950s where there was segregation and Jim Crow and we're still slaves and all these things, it's just exhausting and annoying. And a lot of this rhetoric that a lot of fake wokes or progressives spew, they have to pretend that we still live in those times and exaggerate things as if things are still that bad for this, what they're saying to make any sense. It's like, I acknowledge the past, I acknowledge my history, I acknowledge my culture, I'm really proud of my culture. I'm not going to pretend I had anything to do with it. I wasn't there, I didn't exist, and I would never take that away from the people who really fought for me to be here now. And for me to act as if nothing happened, as if there was no progress, is almost like a slap in the face of the people who fought so you can have the freedoms you have today. Like, I was talking to my great-grandma, who's like 100 or something like that, and she is literally flabbergasted and amazed with happiness that I, as a single Black woman, can travel the world and live abroad. This was something that was unheard of in her day. First of all, being a woman doing it, being a single woman doing it, and being a black woman doing it. And she's just like, I can't believe you got on a plane, went to a different country, and now you're just there. Like, it's that simple. I will forever be grateful for the people who fought to get me to where I am today. I'm not going to squander that by bitching and complaining about microaggressions. Like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm living my best life. You know what I mean? There was a hashtag, black and free spirited, or black and happiness, or something like that, that people were actually bitching about, saying, oh, well, black people can't be free spirited because we have so much oppression. Like, it's so sad that there are grown as adults that teach this to their kids. Like, your kid, you have your kid in front of you, and you're like putting the rocks and the weight in the world of their shoulders. You're shackling their ankles for them. It's like, are you fucking kidding? Like, it's really insane. But people are waking up to it, gratefully. But not fast enough, and not soon enough. But anyway, let's continue.
That we were supposed to still be speaking that language that the Black Panthers had spoken, it struck me as a pose. And there was a part of me that was deeply disturbed by the artificiality of it, and that you were actually expected to live it.
Why the okay, so you use very specific words. Oppose, artificial, as opposed to what? Like, on what base? Like, you're comparing it to something,
Sure.
and it sounds like you're comparing it, and you don't just regard it as an exaggeration. Your criticism has gone farther than that in the past. I mean, you've also directly stated that conceptualization of the problem in this form is actually interfering with the solutions that we still need to generate. So it's not just an exaggeration; it's a problem in and of itself, and that's a deeper criticism. So what's the artificiality as far as you're concerned, and compared to what? What you're trying to live, apparently, but what is that exactly?
The question is, how much of an obstacle is racism after formal segregation has been battled, after racial attitudes changed profoundly in the 1970s? And I'm just old enough to have watched that happen. It gets to the point where, okay, racism does exist, both social and institutional, but how much of an obstacle is it to doing pragmatic things that will make poor Black people less poor and all Black people happier? So, quick example would be that these days you can look at the fact that Black kids tend not to do as well on standardized tests as other kids. It's there. Now, you can look at that and you can say, well, if Black kids don't do as well on the test, that's because of racism, and so we need to eliminate the test because the test is racist. Now, in what way is the test racist? 40 years ago, maybe those tests asked you what wine goes with chicken. That hasn't been true for generations now. So it's not about asking people things that they have no reason to know. How is it racist? And there are people today who even will imply that Black thought is somehow incompatible with tests like that, which is very close to saying that Black people are incapable of disembodied abstract thought. And many whites will chime in.
It's probably identical with that claim.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, especially given that the people who are saying it know very well the history of that being said about Black people. And so you look at the tests and you say that because Black kids don't do well on them, they are examples of systemic racism. Well, you have to get rid of racism, so you have to get rid of the tests, which means that you tell America that Black kids can't have their abstract reasoning measured without it being racist. And then when you get somebody saying, well, then Black kids just must not be as quick on the uptake, you call them a racist. And in the meantime, it's ignored that you consider helping Black kids get better at the tests, helping Black kids' parents realize what free test prep programs there are in those neighborhoods. The tests just take a little bit of practice, but you're not supposed to talk about it because the tests, quote unquote, are racist. It's an abuse of language. And it's abuse of the very conception of what racism is. That's not what my mother raised me in. That's not your grandmother's racism. That's something that comes from a way of thinking that was marginal in 1955, became sexy in about 1966, and here in 2021 is being treated as impregnable wisdom.
Stopping it there, like, I totally agree. And what he's meaning is like, because someone didn't do good on a test and it was just labeled and deemed racist, they never got to the root problem of maybe that kid is dyslexic and they can't really read the problem. And now you don't know because you just deemed it racist. Or if a little girl's not doing good in math, you just deem the math class racist or the math teacher racist, instead of, digging a little further and realizing the kid has a broken home and there's no one to help this kid study. It's always like racism. You're not getting to the root problem of the actual issue. You're not actually helping anybody at all. And I used to believe in this, and a lot of people of color believe in this. A lot of people of color are really easily duped into believing these things, because it's always like, for your best interests, you need to believe in these things so we can help you, right? And so like I used to think standardized tests were racist too. Like I remember someone giving me the example of, if there's a multiple question of like, what is a tea kettle, and only a middle class or upper middle class child ever seen a tea kettle, someone who's a lower class or lower working class, their parents just boil the water in the pots, they won't understand what a tea kettle is, and they'll pick pot and then they'll get it wrong. Instead of maybe understanding that kid maybe never seen a tea kettle but can still have enough brain cells to still, by the process of elimination, understand what that tea kettle is. Okay, I know this is a pot because this is what my mother used. I know this is a plate and I know this is a bowl. So this must be a tea kettle. But instead of allowing kids to do that, you just basically say like, oh, black people are just too dumb. We're never gonna get it. All right, so again, woke racism, but let's continue.
Someone black has to speak out against that. So that's what I mean by the exaggeration and the artificiality and the outright harm that comes from these sorts of things.
Well, and with regard to it being a pose, so is it a pose of? So I could say, well, is it a pose of unearned virtue? I mean, virtue is not easy to earn. True virtue. You have to establish, let's say, we'll see where we go with this. Maybe you have to establish a relationship with beauty, and beauty is real. You have to establish a relationship with truth, and truth is real. And so to earn virtue is difficult because beauty and truth are imposing and formidable. If you have any sense at all, you see that. And so that's a daunting task to establish genuine virtue, and a terrifying task. And is the pose the willingness to adopt? See, because when I talk to the ideologue type, this ideological pose is the aping of virtue, as far as I can tell. And I mean that in sort of a technical sense, is that you master this language and it contains the expressions of true virtue. But, the kind of problems that you were talking about, and I see this on the environmentalist side of things too. Well, how do you get black kids to do better in elementary school, let's say? Well, that's a more manageable problem. It's a problem that would take a little bit more humility to conceptualize. And it's also a really, really hard problem. And so to be virtuous in your attempts to solve that would probably require the dedication of your entire life, really, to take a good crack at that problem, right? Because that's a tough problem, man. And so maybe you don't want to do that and then you're enticed by your educators into this alternative possibility where all you really have to do is master a set of propositions and you're on the winning side. And that also gives you some convenient enemies, and maybe it fulfills to some degree the religious instinct. And it appalls me to see the universities complicit in this, and that they've come to see that. And I think part of that falseness and artificiality that you described, I think the fact that exists is part of the overbearing insistence that the veil not be lifted and that no one question this, because what is underneath it is so damn ugly.
All right, guys, that was Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I forget the guy's name. Forgive me, but he is the author of Woke Racism, or coined the term woke racism. And basically towards the end there, I believe Dr. Jordan Peterson, in a lot more intellectual way, was basically talking about virtual signaling. It's I'm gaining virtue by not doing much of anything but signaling to the right people, the right tribe, the right community that I'm a good person and I'm on the right side. I don't actually have to do any research. I don't have to actually educate myself. I don't actually have to physically do anything or be an activist, really. I can just always have the right vernacular and lingo and put hashtags in my bio and boom, I'm virtuous, right? Which is not really true virtue. But anyway, that's it, guys. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to get to notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal and Cash App link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course, it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. Another great way to support this channel is visit my brand new merch shop. Links down below and links to all of the alternative platforms I'm on. My socials, including my Twitter, other ways to support me and other ways to contact me for business is always in the links down below. I also have a second travel vlog channel. I travel as a lifestyle or live abroad. If you'd like to know where I am in the world, you can go to the description box below and also in the comment section. Hit the link, go subscribe to my travel vlog channel, and or follow me on my travel Instagram. My stories is usually what's most up to date. I also have on my main channel, Mika Reacts and Reviews. Links down below, and you guys have an amazing day. Bye!